Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the extra mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now your hosts, Jackson Mummy and Megan Saya from Celebration Bar Review.
Hey everybody, welcome. It is Wednesday, March 9th. We're glad to have you with us. People are just starting to gear up for the July exams, and we're in the midst of spring break. And wow, we've been away for a couple of weeks, and now we're back. Hey Megan, how are you?
Hi, doing well. Excited to be done with the February exam and looking forward to July now.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. We turn our focus, and today we're going to look back a little bit at the February exams and what we can talk about there. We'll look forward to the July exams, and we've got some questions that have come in from students over the past couple of weeks about how to study for those July exams, and so we'll get to those questions and answers later. And then June, you're with us as well today. How are you?
Hey, Jackson, I am doing great.
Good. And I understand you're actually calling in from Florida today. So.
I am. I'm in sunny Florida, which I heard it was snowing back home this morning. So I'm really happy to be here for a few days of sunshine.
Good, good.
Next, we wanted to invite students to email and suggest topics for the webinar. We really enjoyed doing these sort of deep dives on very specific subtopics for the last exam, and we'd like to continue doing that. So we can, of course, pick them, but it's really helpful if the people who actually are on the webinar and listening live or later, if you give us topics that are confusing for you. So definitely let us know anything that you are struggling with or feel like it would be really helpful for you to have a deeper dive on. And I want to say the more specific, the better in terms of don't tell me property, tell me something specific that, yeah, exactly. So be specific on what is the difficult part of the subject for you. So we would love to get your suggestions just so that it's responsive to what people want to hear about.
Yeah, we got great reaction to that before the February exam, and we actually placed those parts of our weekly Q&As into the course platform. So if you're a registered student in our course, you have permanent access to those, which we've seen a lot of people have gone through, and I think it's a great resource. So yeah, it's good for you and me. It keeps us on our toes, and I have a lot of fun doing it. So I look forward to resuming that next week.
Next, we need to chat as much as we can and are allowed to about what the subjects were from the February bar. What'd you hear, Jackson, about the exam? I know you did a lot of debriefs with students and got to talk to people all over the country about what their experience was like. I know we're not allowed to say everything at this point, but what can we talk about?
We can talk about Florida, California, and Georgia in some detail. We can say far less about the UBE because of some constraints from the National Conference of Bar Examiners, some restraints on what licensees can say until they release their information publicly. I will start by saying this. There didn't seem to be a lot of surprises around the country. Most people felt pretty good about going back into the in-person exam setting. There were some stories of people being kicked out of exams because they got sick or they suddenly developed temperature. There were, unfortunately, some people who didn't have their COVID vaccine cards or their tests or their results, and they showed up at test centers around the country and were denied access. That's always sad and disappointing. But in general, the broad scope that I heard, and I think you did too, Megan, was that things went pretty well, certainly better than we heard when we were online for the last 2 years, that we didn't get much of that technology drama. So that part was good. The other part, before we get to what was tested, is that we asked students in these debriefs that we did if they felt prepared. And that's always an important question to me. Before results come back, you've taken the test, did you feel prepared or not prepared? And I can tell you that 100%, literally, of the people that we talked to, and it was quite a few people, across all of the jurisdictions that we test and prepare for, said, yeah, I felt prepared. I felt like there was nothing on the exam that I had not been exposed to or seen or been told to be aware of or be looking for. So that is really good news, obviously, and makes us feel terrific. And so I'm excited about that. Having said that, let me just briefly jump into what we can tell you about testable topics in each state. We'll go through them quickly because we know not everybody's interested in all of them. Starting in Florida, there were 3 essays and 3 multiple choice topics. The 3 essays, the first was Florida Con Law with a professionalism crossover. And it was a typical Florida Con Law question. It's a mind bender, right? This one was about bath salts and civil asset forfeiture, and it was crazy. It was a crazy question. And then the professionalism part was something to the effect of, I hate the opposing counsel, treat them with contempt, and I expect you as my attorney to do the same. Gee, I don't know. It sounds perfectly okay to me, don't you think? So that was question number 1. Question number 2 was an axe throwing bar. If you're a fan of the TV show The Good Fight, you've probably seen the axe throwing scenes, but there was an axe throwing bar. And who could imagine that things would go wrong in an axe throwing bar? But everything goes wrong. People lose body parts and they get drunk and bad things happen. And it's a torts question without dram shop liability, but an interesting question nonetheless, kind of a fun one if you like blood and gore. And then the third question in Florida was a trust question, very typical. Was the trust validly formed? And then does the trustee act appropriately? And then what happens to the beneficiaries of the trust when they want to dissolve the trust? And a straightforward question. That was the morning part of the exam. In the afternoon, the multiple choice questions were drawn from wills, business entities, and Florida civil and criminal procedure. I will say that this was one of those jurisdictions where I think I called it pretty much accurately. The only thing that I didn't think was going to happen is I didn't think they'd have both trusts and wills on the same exam. So there you go. If you're in our Florida course, the Florida essay questions are now in your Florida essay book 2. Am I correct, Megan?
Yes.
Okay. So you can check those out. We've not yet added answers, but we do have the questions there so that you can look at those. So that's what we heard in Florida. And I think students felt pretty good about it. They weren't impossible questions, right? They were relatively short and pretty focused, and that's something we're always looking for.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to the Florida discussion?
No, I think that's great. What are we hearing out of Georgia and California?
Okay, Georgia. In Georgia, I can't talk to you a whole lot about the performance tests because those come from the national conference. I'll get to that in just a minute. But in Georgia, as you know, we have 4 essays that are given, and the 4, at least as we understand it, Georgia civil procedure was tested along, it was in a divorce question. We had a question like this in the course where it's really family law, but a lot of civil procedure about who's got jurisdiction and venue and so on. It was nearly a mirror image of that prior question. So that was one of the questions. The second question was corporations with we think with ethics, crossed in a little bit of ethics to that question. Some people saw it as business associations more generally. I would say the big winner across the country this year had to be business associations and corporations, didn't it?
Yeah, it was a very corporate focused exam. I feel like in pretty much every jurisdiction. Very interesting.
Yeah, it's a little weird. So that was an interesting sort of crossover type of question and corporations. Then there was a crossover with criminal procedure with evidence. And so a little bit of crim pro, a little bit of evidence. I think most people saw it more as an evidence question than anything else, but that's what we got. The evidence question was weird in Georgia. It was literally 10 items. It was an aberration. It was a black swan. They weren't looking. I didn't expect you to write 30 paragraphs. Let's just be clear. I think you just had to say yes, no, inadmissible with a single sentence. It's actually a throwback to the old days of the Georgia short form exam for attorneys, where they just had fill in the blanks almost. Very weird question, I thought.
It's very interesting at a time when many jurisdictions are looking at changing the bar exam to going and doing more of these short form essays and things like that. I thought it was very interesting that we suddenly saw this almost short answer type of essay pop up in Georgia again.
Yeah. Go figure. I'm not sure exactly what that means or if we'll see that again, but it was an interesting decision. And then the last topic was contracts, seemed to be the most straightforward of all the questions on the exam. In general, again, I think if you look at the preview video I did, I was pretty accurate on this exam as well. I certainly didn't expect 10 questions in evidence. I got to admit, I did not see that one coming. But topic-wise, we were pretty much on topic. Now, what I can tell you about the two performance tests, and all I can tell you, is that one of the performance tests was an objective task to a legal audience. The other was a persuasive task to a legal audience, as we correctly anticipated. But again, the national conference produces those. I can't tell you anything more about them. We know more about them, just can't say it publicly. So there you go. So that's what we heard in Georgia. Again, students felt pretty good about it. A little different. It wasn't an open book exam this year, but I feel like our students, they seem to feel they were pretty well prepared. I think that takes us to California next. Okay, good old California. California, I've seen tougher lineups, I thought, than we got on this exam. The reactions seemed to be pretty straightforward about these questions. I don't know the order in which they were asked necessarily. There was a criminal procedure question, not crim law, but criminal procedure. So Fifth, Sixth Amendment kinds of things. Then there was a community property essay. I love when we see community property because it seems like such a straightforward subject to me. Then there was evidence with professional responsibility. The professional responsibility had to do with withdrawal of counsel, and the evidence was, I think it was an alibi statement and hearsay. So again, that struck me as being pretty straightforward. And then there was a torts question with a focus on remedies. It sounds like it was nuisance and trespass and injunctive relief. So that was more remedies, I thought, than trust, the way it was explained to me. And not to be left out, business entities. It was there. And this was an interesting question, wasn't it, Megan? It was general partners in a business, and then they want to incorporate, and then they try to pierce the corporate veil, and then there's problems with their shareholders, and I mean, just went on and on. But it seemed to morph from here's, what the form of the business entity all the way through corporations and into corporate law. So that's what we saw there. So those were the 5 essays. The performance test in California, which is not written by the National Conference, was an objective task to a legal audience. I'm trying to remember what the particular topic, I think it was in crim with some ethics. And so it was a little weird because there was a crim law question and there was an ethics crossover somewhere else, but then there was crim law and ethics together in the performance test, just to make it even more interesting. I know California is where you spend your time. You hear anything else specifically about the Cal exam?
Yeah, same as you heard. I think that it was a lot of the questions were pretty straightforward, but it was definitely, as California always is, it was a tough exam. They don't make it easy out here, that's for sure.
I'm saying that I was pretty accurate on all these because we're going to get to UBE where I whiffed, but I was pretty much on top of it. Again, we were really pretty much there all the way through. And if you're in our course and you're taking the July exams in any of these jurisdictions, you can find in your course my videos leading up to the February exams, so you can see what I said and then you can compare it for yourself. So there you go. And then that leads us finally to UBE, which of course includes New York, Texas, 30 plus jurisdictions. Again, I cannot tell you the subjects, but what I can say is this. I had anticipated on this exam it would be at least an even split between the multi-state subject essays and the UBE subject essays. I was wrong about that. It was most day one subjects being tested in the essay format and very few multi-state subjects. Now, I will say I got the multi-state subjects correct, and I got a fair number of the UBE subjects correct. It's just I didn't anticipate so many UBE subjects being on the exam. But that having been said, I thought it was, and the feedback I got was pretty much that people felt like it was manageable, right? That the questions were not overwhelming. There were 3 to 5 distinct calls to every question. There were no crossovers that I'm aware of. Everything was single subject, which is nice. And they seem to be pretty manageable topics. They weren't huge, big subjects. And of course, they had the 2 performance tests that they had in Georgia. So that's what we've got there. So yeah, I got to admit, sometimes I felt really good about California, Florida, and Georgia. Boy, did not see that choice of subjects coming up in the UBE. So that's why you should not rely on predictions, and why we try not to call them predictions, but previews, because you can think you got it going, but and then it hits you. So there you go. Anything we can add to UBE? Is that sound about right?
Nope, that's great. So let's turn our focus now to what happens next. I think first I want to start with a discussion for the people who took the July exam. And there's kind of 2 camps, and it's very interesting because June said one camp seems to be morphing into the other. But so, right, there's people who left the exam and felt good, felt like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel really good about this. And so then they're wondering, what do I do, if anything, now? So people who've had a history of failing the exam in the past, or feeling like, I feel good about this. We heard a lot, like, this is the best I've ever felt coming out of the exam, but I'm still a little nervous of, what do I do? Should I be studying? Should I do something right now? Then, of course, there's the people who feel like, I felt good about what I did, but I still don't, I just don't feel comfortable. Like, I'm not feeling like comfortable enough to say I'm not studying at all. So for all those people, Jackson, what do you recommend at this point, where we're beginning of March, they've just got the exam in the rearview mirror, looking at July, maybe not looking at July? What do you suggest?
Yeah, it's really a great question. I think in general, I would use the month of March to walk away from the bar exam. It's part of the reason we don't have a big crowd on with us live today, although I'm sure there'll be a lot of people watching later. But I think taking the month of March off is good for you physically, and it's good for you mentally. You need to have some time to decompress and get away from the bar exam. I can tell you that your family and friends don't want to hear anything about the bar at this point, and you need to probably make some amends. If you're like most of us, probably need to reconnect into that world. Now, that isn't forever. That's just the month of March. I think when we get to April, a couple things happen. We'll start to get some early UBE results in early April. We'll get Florida results mid-April. And that will tell us a lot. They'll tell us sort of the general trend of what's happening, how tough the exam was. By the way, we didn't hear much about the multi-state that makes us think it was unusually difficult or out of the ordinary in any way. And so what I would say is, when you get to April, depending on when your results are coming out, if you're in a jurisdiction like Georgia where you're not going to get your results until late in May, or you're in California, which will be early May, and some of the UBEs won't come out until May as well, I would start doing some light reading, but not much more than that, in the month of April. Just a little bit of just keeping your toes in the water, if you will, to see what's going on. My experience is that if you start studying too intently before you know your results, it's not very focused study. It's hard to know what you should be looking at. And so the result of that is it feels like it's like drinking lukewarm water. It just doesn't, it's not good. It's not refreshing. It doesn't do anything except make you go, ugh. And so I would just take a little bit of time off that way. And if you feel like, if you're a photo reader, by all means, photo read your outlines, but maybe look at your mind maps a little bit, but not go in deeply in the month of April. Does that make sense to you, Megan?
Yeah, that's great. All right. A question that one student said, they said, I felt better. This is someone who took the February exam. They said, I felt better about my essays than I ever have before in a prior exam, but I do want to do a little bit of studying. And so they said they want to review some questions just to stay fresh next month. So like you suggested, and they said, I have access to the program while waiting on my results.
Yeah, everybody's got access right now, and you'll have access through the time that you pass the bar. So there's no problem with that. You can go in and jump in and do that work. You could pick essays if you wanted, or do some MBEs. If you're going to do MBEs, I would just do the randomized 800 just to keep yourself going there. I think you have to feel your own way through this as to what you think you can absorb, but don't expect a lot out of the study that you do at this point. That's really the point I want to make. it's going to be relatively unfocused study. So if it reduces your anxiety to do a little study, do it. But final bottom line here, you will have enough time to get ready for the July exam, regardless of when your results come out.
All right. And another February student said, how do I start the course over again? Since it wondering if they get booted into another section or the beginning once they've actually taken the test.
Yeah, we don't reset the course. And it would be my advice that you not restart the course from the beginning. I would continue with what you're doing and circle back to the things that you feel least comfortable with, regardless of what you've done before. I think this idea that you got to go back and go to step one and do the first things probably isn't necessary. There are some assignments throughout the course that are called optional. There might be some things that are deeper dives that you want to look into, like the sessions, Megan, that you and I have done on these different difficult topics or the 10 hardest MBE questions. And you might want to spend some time working on those if you didn't do them the last time around. But in general, the way that the course is designed is it doesn't reset everybody back to zero. This isn't everyone at the same time doing the same thing. So you can jump in any place that you like.
Great. For students who are just starting out, we had one who asked, is there a course calendar that they should be following?
Yeah, there is no course calendar because everybody's on a different schedule and working differently. But what I would say is this: if you're taking the July exam and you're listening to us now in March, I think 10 to 15 hours a week is plenty of study time. If you can put a little more in, great. But I would try to stay at least at that 10-hour a week mark, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that would be fantastic. We don't want you burning out. That's really the key right now.
And so you just start at the top of the course lessons and you work through the lesson. When you finish a lesson, go on to the next one and then keep going and just mark where you finished if a study period ends and you haven't finished an assignment. But don't feel locked in or tied into a calendar. We want you to have maximum flexibility. So just take your 10 hours and allocate them throughout the week and then study as you're able.
Yeah, great. All right. Okay. And so our last handful of questions are going to be all for the July takers. So we know that this is the meat and potatoes as we turn towards this now. All right. In general, Jackson, what should July students be doing? So this is people who did not take the February exam and they know they're sitting for July. They're locked in for it. What should they be doing now? And what do the next couple of months look like for them?
Okay. So the first thing, as we've already talked about, I think that any July student should look first at Calming the Chaos, the Time Management Workshop, and the Personal Writing Workshop. Those are fundamental add-ons that I think make a big difference. And if you think you have a need for any of those, do them now. This is the time to get those done. Now, once you are underway with those, I would jump into the course material at the beginning and start going through the lessons. I would set up that 10 to 15 hours a week, and I would start following it in the order that you see it in the course as it's presented on your online screen. The choice of doing optional assignments, right now, you have the time to do them. So if there's an optional assignment and it's a deeper dive into selective intuition or the reasoning and the thought process behind the course, go ahead and do it. It's light work and it's generally pretty helpful to do that. Beyond that, I don't think you have to do anything special. I think at this stage, you should just be getting your feet wet and getting underway. I do think when we get into April, if you are in the basic coaching course, that is the one where you're not working directly with Megan or directly with me, that's the time I would consider upgrading and adding that, because you and I both have limited capacity and it's first come, first serve to sign up into those courses. And so that's when I would suggest that people upgrade so that they can get the coaching calls with either one of us.
Yeah. And to make sure that you have time to use all of your coaching calls, right? So we're here and we have so much, understandably, very few people are fully studying yet for the July exam. So we have a lot of availability and it gets real hard. We get you in, man, we get everybody in at the end there, but it's a lot more pleasant for you when you say, oh, I'm good to go. And I don't have to stress booking calls the day before the bar exam.
That's definitely true. And we're pretty good at this, Megan. I think you're going into your 11th year. I'm going into my 31st year. So we do understand the assignments and we know what we have to do here, but you're going to find a lot more flexibility early on. And so it's to your advantage and you get to use the skills early and build on them. So that's the advantage.
Yeah, exactly. All right. The next person, we have a lot of questions for July takers about this schedule, right? So a lot of people said, I understand there's not a specific schedule, but this first one saying, how do I figure out what my work schedule looks like with my study schedule? How should I be integrating that?
Yeah, again, the time management workshop with Brianna is really helpful. But I think that the way I would do it is I would sit down and look at my calendar in a 7-day increment and block out the absolutes on my week. So work, family, community commitments, whatever those might be. And then I would start looking at 1, 2, or 3 hour blocks of bar study time. I think less than an hour is not effective. I think more than 3 hours is not necessary. And so I would just start blocking those in so that you've got a total of 10 or 15 of those bar study hours built into your schedule, and then show up for the appointment with yourself to study. One of the beauties of our course is that you can use any device that connects to the internet. So you could be on your phone or an iPad or any pad or a laptop or a desktop and access the material whatever time, wherever you might be. And I think that's helpful to people to be able to do that, but make sure that you've got your schedule set up and don't try to overschedule, right? It's the people that try to schedule the next 3 months that are going to get themselves in trouble, I think.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. So I just want to echo that. Do it like a week at a time. Don't try to, and I am this person, so I say this with love and understanding. Don't try to look at all the assignments and block them in your calendar from now until July. Just give yourself the grace to know life is going to happen between now and July. Things are going to happen that will disrupt your study. It's absolutely guaranteed. And so you will be able to roll with it much easier if you have not gone ahead and locked yourself in mentally to a schedule unnecessarily. Okay. So I really want to emphasize that point of just do it a few days out. And then in a few days, you do a few more days out, and then you won't feel so panicked when something happens that you get sick or a loved one gets sick and you have to care for them. Let's say super common. You're not going to feel so behind if you say, that's okay. I have only a couple of days that I need to rearrange, as opposed to saying, well, now when I look down the line, June is messed up. Like, you don't want to be thinking about June being messed up if we're only in March. Okay. Next, again, moving with this schedule. I liked this question. They said, I understand there's no dedicated schedule, but is there a theme that might help me tackle this very large exam? For instance, do you suggest knocking out all the MBE subjects, or should I do a weird mixture of all the subjects, including essays?
Yeah, we've actually built the theme into the course. If you're starting at the beginning in Unit 1 and you're going to Unit 2 and 3 and 4, within those units, the lessons are designed to build sequentially and to build on top of previous lessons. So it is better to follow unit by unit than it is to cherry pick and jump around. You will see that within units as we go along, we will backtrack into questions from previous units. So follow that as much as you can. I know that it's a change for people that we're used to seeing a day-by-day schedule or a check-off-the-box schedule. I get that. But ultimately, we felt that this was a better way to incorporate the way people really study, which is a little more flexible and to not be quite so rigid, and to recognize we've got people studying for July of 2022, but we have people studying for July of 2023 and February of 2024 and February of we got people all over the place. And so you just can't put everybody on the same daily kind of schedule.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and remembering always that it's a spiral review or stepped review. So you're going to come back around to the information repeatedly. And I think that segs really nicely into our last question, which is about the studying procedure. So this student said, I'm photo reading, I'm making mind maps, I'm listening to lectures, I'm taking notes in a notebook, and then I'm expanding on my initial mind maps. So this person said they are stopping about every minute in the video to write down notes. So they're turning a 4-hour lecture into a 5 to 6 hour lecture. So they said, is this an appropriate approach? And do you have any insight on the nuts and bolts of how to study?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't do that. I think that's overdoing it. The way that I would do it is literally photo read, and then you'll see the assignment that says, if you're a photo reader, spend this much time photo reading, this much time making your mind map, and you should do it that way. Then it'll say, when you get to the lecture, watch the lecture, and then spend this much time afterwards doing your mind map. Trying to stop every minute or two breaks up the flow. And the design of the lecture is designed to give you a coherent overview of the subject. When you're done with that, then open your book and add to your mind map, and you'll get more out of that. Even though you may feel like you're not getting the granular detail, you don't need it. You can always go back and dive in deeper. And we've got a product called BarMaps that helps you get even more in that granular depth, but it's too early in general to be doing that. I would rather see you get the bigger picture and just keep moving. If you're going, you say it might take 4 hours to get through that lecture. It seems to me like it might take 8 or 10, and that's going to cause people to not get far enough through the subjects, and then they're going to get panicked, and then bad things start to happen. So try to follow the timeframes that are in each assignment. We give you a time to complete each specific assignment. We don't say when you have to do it on the calendar, but we say this assignment will take you 3 hours or 2 hours and 30 minutes or whatever it might be. Stay within that, because that really reflects our best experience about what it takes to actually incorporate and learn that material at the deeper level that we want you to learn it.
Yeah, I think that the key thing to understand about this course is that we do not have the expectation that you will listen to a lecture and know everything that you need to know about that topic. Now, we've given you all the information, right? If you've read the outline and listened to the lecture, that's all the information is contained in there that you're going to need to know for the bar. But we do not have the expectation that you understand fully all of that at the end of that. So I think people put a lot of pressure on themselves to feel like, I have to, if I don't understand statute of frauds right at this moment, I'm toast. That's not our expectation. So I hope that people hear that and then they can release themselves from that expectation. You're going to put it into practice, which is what we believe actually teaches you. So you get the basic foundation of what these pieces are, but then it's the actually using them in context that's going to teach you how to apply it on the exam, which is the ultimate skill that you need to learn. Don't worry and don't stress yourself out, especially in March and April, about feeling like I don't understand all the nuance yet. We know that, and we're not expecting you to know all the nuance yet. And you're going to get there, but it's a process to get there. Pull a Philly on you and say, trust the process. Okay.
There you go. Yeah, I think that's great advice. And everybody just be calm, take a breath, just keep working. If you're studying and thinking about the bar right now, you're way ahead of the game. Most people taking the July bar haven't even thought about it yet. They won't even jump into classes in the big box bar reviews until 8 weeks before the exam. So you've got a huge advantage.
Yeah. Most people taking the July exam are still taking 3L classes right now. They're not even. They have so many finals and clinics to get through before they even start thinking even remotely about the bar exam. So,
Cabo, right, for spring.
Yeah, exactly. They're thinking about what am I going to do over spring break? Don't panic and don't feel like you've got to have everything mastered, because you do not yet. And we are not expecting that of you. And so we certainly don't want you to be expecting that of you. All right. So realistic expectations are the name of the game. We say it all the time. This is a marathon. You are in mile 1 right now. If you're a July student, we are in the first mile. And so you have got to pace yourself so that you do not fall down and, pass out before we get to that finish line. Okay. So stick with us, trust. And Jackson, June, and myself and our amazing group coaches are all here for you. And so when you need something, please reach out to us and let us know how we can help you. We try to we're constantly coming up with new ideas and new ways to better serve the needs of our students, and be in communication with us, be in community on the website. Make sure that you are go there with your questions. There are alums there who have used CBR and passed the bar exam. There's current students who can empathize and are right there with you. And we love to see people leaning on each other as well. And we obviously check it as well. And we'll be happy to answer any questions on the page, whatever we can do.
Yeah, great. It's good to see you again. It's good to see June. Glad to be back with all of you. Thanks for being with us. We'll be back next Wednesday. And thanks to everybody for being here. Send us your suggestions for subjects that you'd like us to cover, and we will be glad to do that. And of course, send us your study questions, and we'll cover those as well. For me, I'm thrilled to see all of you, and I'll say bye for now until next week, and we'll see you then.
Thanks for listening and watching the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at celebrationbarreview.com.